Hello, sleepy soul. The night is quiet, the world is asleep, and something is waiting in the dark. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and write your country and current time in the comments. Now listen carefully. Have you ever stayed somewhere that felt wrong before anything actually happened? That was room 313 for me. My name is Samir, and I was 19 when this happened. I was in my first year at a private college in Lahore, living in the boys' hostel because my family was from a smaller town almost 5 hours away. Back then, I was the kind of person who could sleep anywhere. Noisy fan, thin mattress, people shouting in the hallway at 2 a.m. None of it bothered me. At least, not until that semester. The hostel was old but normal. Peeling paint, damp corners, metal beds, broken bathroom locks, and that weird smell every hostel has, like dust, detergent, and old food mixed together. The building had 3 floors, with rooms numbered from 101 to 312. That detail matters, because the room they gave me was 313. I still remember standing at the reception desk, holding my admission folder while the warden flipped through a register. "Name?" he asked. "Samir Ahmed." He ran his finger down the page, then paused. "3rd floor, room 313. I didn't think anything of it. I took the key and dragged my suitcase up the stairs. The 3rd floor was quieter than the others. Most boys were still arriving, so the corridors were half empty, doors open, families helping students unpack. I passed 308, 309, 310, 311, 312. Then the hallway kept going. Just a few more steps, around a slight bend I hadn't noticed from the stairs. And there it was, 313. The door looked older than the others. Darker wood, no nameplate, just 3 metal numbers nailed crookedly near the top. Inside, it was clean. Too clean, actually. 1 bed, 1 desk, 1 chair, 1 cupboard, a window facing the back side of the hostel, where there was nothing but a narrow service lane and a wall with broken glass cemented on top. I unpacked. I called my mother and told her everything was fine. That first night, I slept badly. Not because anything happened. Not exactly. It was the silence. In a boys' hostel, silence is unnatural. There's always someone laughing, coughing, dragging a chair, playing music, arguing on the phone. But inside that room, sound felt muffled, like the walls were thick with cotton. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft knock. 3 taps. Not loud, not urgent, just polite. I sat up, confused, thinking maybe it was one of the seniors trying to scare new students. "Who is it?" I called. No answer. I opened the door after a minute. The hallway was empty. But the strange thing was the lights were off all the way down the corridor except one tube light near room 312, flickering like it was struggling to stay alive. I told myself it was nothing. The next morning, I went down for breakfast and sat with 2 boys from my class, Hamza and Bilal. We were talking about lectures when Bilal asked where I'd been assigned. 313, I said. Both of them looked at me, not scared, just confused. "What?" Hamza said. "Room 313. He gave a half laugh. "Bro, there is number 313. I thought he was joking. "There is. I slept there." Bilal frowned. "This hostel has 312 rooms. Everyone knows that." I laughed too, because it sounded stupid. "Then where did I sleep?" "On the roof." Hamza shrugged. "Maybe you mean 312. I pulled the key from my pocket and showed them. The tag was old plastic, yellowed around the edges. 313. They went quiet. After breakfast, they came upstairs with me. We passed 308, 309, 310, 311, 312. And then, the hallway ended. Just ended. A plain wall stood where the bend had been. No door. No extra stretch of corridor. Nothing. I remember standing there with the key in my hand, feeling stupid and cold at the same time. "That's not possible," I said. Hamza looked at me differently now. "Where's your stuff?" "My suitcase. My clothes. My laptop. My books. Everything I owned was in that room. I went straight to the warden. He was annoyed before I even finished explaining. "Room 313, he said. "Who gave you this?" "You did." He stared at the key like he didn't want to touch it. Then he opened the register. My name was there. Samir Ahmed, room 312. Not 313. He told me I must have read it wrong, that maybe someone played a prank, that my belongings were probably in 312. But 312 belonged to another student, and when we checked, my things weren't there. By afternoon, I was panicking. Then, around Maghrib, while I was sitting on the stairs wondering whether I should call my father, Hamza came running down. "Samir, come." We went up to the 3rd floor. The bend was back. Room 313 was there again, sitting quietly in the dim hallway like it had never moved. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That's how it felt when I stepped inside. My suitcase was exactly where I'd left it. My bed was still unmade. My towel was hanging over the chair. But something had changed. On my desk, there was a piece of paper. Just one line, written in pencil. "You were not supposed to bring them." I didn't sleep there that night. I grabbed my things as fast as I could and moved into Hamza's room. We didn't tell many people because honestly, how do you explain that without sounding insane? The next day, room 313 was gone again. For almost a week, nothing happened. Classes started. Life got busy. I began to convince myself it had been some weird maintenance area, maybe a hidden corridor, maybe I'd been tired and confused. Hamza stopped joking about it, but he also stopped bringing it up. Then one night, I got a message from an unknown number. "Why did you leave your room?" I stared at it for a long time. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Hamza was asleep. The room was dark except for the little blue light from his phone charger. Outside, someone walked slowly past our door. One step, pause. Another step, pause. Then 3 soft knocks. Not on our door, farther down the hall, where room 313 would have been. I didn't move until morning. After that, things got worse in small ways. My notebook went missing from class and appeared under my pillow. A shirt I'd left drying on the hostel roof came back folded on my bed. My student ID disappeared for 2 days, then showed up taped to the inside of Hamza's cupboard. Every time, there was no sign of who had done it. I went to the warden again. He said boys do stupid things in hostels, especially first year. He told me not to create drama. "You are homesick," he said. "This happens." Maybe that was the worst part. Everyone had an explanation. Stress, ragging, sleepwalking, pranks. But I knew something in that building had noticed me. One Thursday night, Hamza went home for the weekend. I didn't want to stay alone, so I asked Bilal if I could sleep in his room. He said yes. Around midnight, while I was brushing my teeth in the shared bathroom, the lights went out. Not in the whole hostel, just the bathroom and the corridor outside. I stood there with toothpaste in my mouth, listening. Then I heard it, a voice from the dark hallway. "Samir." It was quiet, not a whisper, not loud, just my name, spoken by someone who knew I would hear it. I stepped back into the bathroom stall area and locked the door. The voice came again. "Samir, your room is ready." I didn't answer. The handle of the bathroom door turned, slowly, then stopped. There was a gap under the door, and I saw feet on the other side. Bare feet, standing perfectly still. I held my breath so hard my chest hurt. My hands were trembling, and my phone was in my room. I had nothing. No way to call anyone. No way to prove what was happening. After maybe a minute, the feet moved away. 3 slow steps. Then silence. When the lights came back, I ran. I didn't even rinse my mouth. I just ran to Bilal's room and banged on the door until he woke up. The next morning, I told him everything. He didn't laugh. Instead, he got very quiet and said, "There was a student 2 years ago." I still remember the way he said it, like he regretted starting the sentence. His name was Denial. Final year. Good student, quiet guy. One night, he vanished from the hostel. His phone was found on his bed. His wallet was in his drawer. His shoes were by the door. The official story was that he ran away. But students had another version. They said Denial kept telling people he had been moved to a room that wasn't on the hostel map. A room near the end of the third-floor corridor. A room with no roommate. I asked Bilal what number. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. That day I called my father and told him I wanted to leave the hostel. He was worried, but he also thought I was adjusting badly. He said to wait until the end of the month, and then we'd look for a private flat. I agreed because I didn't want to sound crazy. That was my mistake. The final night happened on a Sunday. The hostel was half empty. A lot of boys were still returning from home. Hamza was supposed to come back late, so I was alone in his room for a few hours. At around 11:40 p.m., the power went out. This wasn't unusual. Load shedding happened all the time. I turned on my phone flashlight and kept studying. Then I heard keys. Not outside in the main corridor. At our door. The lock clicked. I stood up. Hamza? I called. No answer. The door opened by itself. Not wide. Just enough for the hallway darkness to show through. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. There was someone standing outside. I couldn't see their face, only their shape. Tall, thin, still. Then the emergency light at the far end flickered on, and I saw what they were holding. My old room 313 key. The yellow plastic tag. The figure placed it gently on the floor and slid it into the room. Then the voice said, "You forgot to check out." I slammed the door and shoved the study table against it. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my phone twice trying to call Hamza. No signal. Of course. I tried Bilal. Nothing. Then the knocking started. 3 taps. Pause. 3 taps. Pause. Not forceful. Not angry. Patient. Like whoever was outside had all night. I climbed out the window. Hamza's room was on the 3rd floor, but there was a narrow concrete ledge outside that connected to the bathroom ventilation area. I don't know how I did it. I was crying, shaking, whispering prayers under my breath. One slip, and I would have fallen badly. But staying felt worse. I crawled along the ledge until I reached the bathroom window and kicked the loose mesh open. I dropped inside, hit my shoulder on the sink, and ran down the stairs barefoot. At the main gate, the security guard was asleep. I shook him awake and begged him to call the police, the warden, anyone. When they finally went upstairs, Hamza's door was open. The table was back in place. My phone was on the desk, and on the bed was my suitcase. The same one I had taken out of room 313 weeks earlier. Packed neatly. On top of it was another note. Next time, come alone. I left that hostel before sunrise. My father arrived by noon, furious at first, then quiet after he saw my face. We collected my documents from the office. The warden didn't argue. He didn't even ask many questions. When we were leaving, I looked up at the 3rd floor from the courtyard. The building looked ordinary. Loud boys, drying clothes, cracked windows, pigeons on the roof. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. A week later, Hamza called me. He said the college had told everyone I withdrew because of family issues. Then he said something that made my skin go cold. A new student had arrived. His room assignment was 313. And when Hamza tried to show him there was no such room, the hallway was longer again. I never went back. It's been years now. I still don't like hotel rooms with numbers ending in 13. I check floor maps. I count doors. I don't stay anywhere that feels too quiet. Even after escaping, even with the safety of police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Because I did see a face that night, just for 1 second, reflected in the glass while I was climbing out. It wasn't a ghost. That's what scares me most. It was a person. Someone who knew the hostel better than anyone. Someone who had a key. Someone who had done this before. And maybe room 313 was never built, but someone was still using it. Story 2. Have you ever met someone and immediately felt like they weren't really there? I know that sounds dramatic. I wouldn't believe it either if someone told me this story. I'd probably think they were tired, stressed, or just trying to make an ordinary college experience sound scary. But I lived with him. For almost 3 weeks, I shared a room with a boy who never went to class, never ate, never used the bathroom, and only spoke after midnight. My name is Ayan. I was 18 when this happened, during my first semester at a college in Islamabad. I had grown up in a smaller city, so moving into a hostel felt like the first real step into adulthood. My parents were nervous, but I was excited. I wanted freedom, late night tea, new friends, the whole student life thing. The hostel itself was nothing special. For floors, old paint, iron beds, dusty windows, and bathrooms that always smelled like wet cement and cheap soap. At night, you could hear boys laughing in the corridors, slippers dragging across the floor, someone playing PUBG too loudly, someone else calling home and pretending they weren't homesick. My room was 217. When I first walked in, there was already a bag on the bed near the window. A black backpack. No clothes unpacked. No books. No bedsheet. Just that bag sitting there like someone had placed it down and walked away. The warden glanced at it and said, "Your roommate came earlier." "What's his name?" I asked. He looked at the register. "Rafi." That was all. I unpacked, called my mother, told her the room was fine, and waited for Rafi to show up. He didn't come until after midnight. I was half asleep when I heard the door unlock. Not a knock, not a push, a key turning very slowly. The door opened, and a tall, thin boy stepped inside. He wore a gray hoodie, black trousers, and white sneakers that looked strangely clean for a hostel. His hair was messy, hanging over his forehead. His face was pale, but I figured maybe he was just tired. "Hey," I said, sitting up. "You're Rafi?" He looked at me for a second too long. Then he nodded. No smile, no handshake. He walked to his bed, placed his backpack under it, and lay down without changing clothes. I remember thinking he was rude. That was it. The next morning, his bed was empty. I assumed he had gone to class early, but when I came back after lectures, his bed looked exactly the same. Same folded blanket, same backpack underneath, no shoes missing, no towel hanging, nothing. That night, he came again after midnight. Same slow key turn, same gray hoodie, same quiet steps. "Where were you all day?" I asked. He sat on his bed and looked at the floor. "Outside," he said. His voice was soft, dry, like he hadn't used it in a long time. I laughed a little, trying to make it normal. "Outside where?" He didn't answer. That was the first off moment. Not scary, just strange. I told myself he was introverted, maybe depressed, maybe homesick. Everyone adjusts differently. But over the next few days, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. Rafi never attended class. I asked around in my department, then in others. Nobody knew him. Nobody had seen him. Not in the cafeteria, not in the courtyard, not at the tea stall outside the gate. He never ate, not once. I kept snacks in the room, and he never touched them. I never saw food wrappers near his bed. No plates, no water bottle, nothing. He only appeared after midnight, and he always left before far. One night, I stayed awake on purpose. I pretended to sleep, facing the wall, with my phone screen dimmed under my blanket. Around 12:17 a.m., the door opened. Rafi came in. He didn't turn on the light. He stood in the doorway for a while, completely still. Then he said, "You're awake." My whole body froze. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. "I couldn't sleep," I said. He walked to his bed and sat down. The room became cold. Not winter cold, more like when you open a freezer and that dry chill touches your face. "Do you like it here?" he asked. I looked over at him. "The hostel?" He nodded. "It's okay," I said. "A bit noisy." He looked at the door. It gets quiet later. Something about the way he said that made me uncomfortable. After that, I started staying out of the room as much as possible. I studied in the library, ate slowly in the cafeteria, sat with other boys until they got annoyed and told me to go sleep. One of them was my classmate, Denial. He was loud, funny, the kind of guy who knew every rumor by the second week. When I mentioned Rafi, he frowned. Rafi who? My roommate. What's his full name? I don't know. Just Rafi. Denial smirked. Bro, are you sure you even have a roommate? I rolled my eyes. Yes, I'm sure. Then why have I never seen him? That question stayed with me. The next day, I went to the hostel office and asked the clerk if I could see my room details. He was eating chips behind the desk and barely looked up. Room 217, he said. Roommate? He checked the file. Then he looked confused. It says single occupancy. I thought I heard him wrong. No, there's another bed. His name is Rafi. He flipped through the register again. No Rafi in 217. I felt heat rise in my face. The warden told me. The warden tells everyone something, he said. Maybe old record, maybe mistake. I didn't argue. I just walked back upstairs feeling stupid and unsettled. That night, Rafi was already in the room. For the first time, he was there before midnight. He was sitting on his bed, facing my side of the room. No lights on, just the blue glow from my laptop charger near the floor. I stopped in the doorway. You asked about me, he said. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I tried to keep my voice steady. I just wanted to know your department. He tilted his head slightly. You shouldn't ask them about me. Them who? He looked toward the window. They forgot. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the ceiling while Rafi sat on his bed until dawn. He didn't move. Not once. I didn't hear him breathe, cough, shift, scratch his face, nothing. At 5:10 a.m., I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, his bed was empty. After that, things started happening in the room. Small things at first. My chair would be turned toward Rafi's bed when I came back from class. My notebooks would be stacked neatly, even though I had left them open. My phone alarm would be switched off in the morning. Then came the notes. The first one was under my pillow. Don't sleep facing the wall. I thought Denial was messing with me, so I showed him. He read it, laughed nervously, then said, Okay, that's weird. Did you write it? No. Then who did? He didn't answer. The second note appeared inside my shoe. You talk in your sleep. The third was taped to the back of the door. He is not your friend. That one scared me the most because I didn't know who he meant. I went back to the office. This time the warden was there. I told him I wanted a room change. He sighed like I had asked him to build me a new hostel. Why? My roommate is strange. His face changed. Just for a second. Then he said, You don't have a roommate. I stared at him. You said his name was Rafi. No, he said too quickly. I didn't. Yes, you did. He closed the register. You are new. You are stressed. Go pray, call your family, focus on studies. There it was again. The same easy explanation. Stress. Homesickness. Adjustment. The street outside the hostel looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting. But my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. That evening, Denial came to my room with 2 other boys. I wanted them to see Rafi's bed, his backpack, anything that proved I wasn't making it up. But when we entered, the second bed was bare. No backpack, no blanket, no sign anyone had ever slept there. Denial looked at me carefully. Ayan, he said, softer than usual. Maybe you should come stay in my room tonight. I agreed. I packed a small bag, took my charger, and left 217. At around 2 a.m., in Denial's room, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. You left your things. I sat up so fast the mattress creaked. A photo loaded underneath. It was a picture of me sleeping, taken from the side of my bed in room 217. Except I hadn't slept there that night. In the photo, I was lying under my blanket, facing the wall. And behind me, sitting on the other bed, was Rafi, smiling. Not a big smile, just enough. I woke Denial immediately. He cursed, grabbed his phone, and we went to the warden. The warden called security, mostly because Denial was shouting and threatening to call the police himself. They opened room 217. Empty. My bed was made. My blanket folded. My small bag, the one I had packed and brought to Denial's room, was sitting in the center of the floor. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The security guard checked the cupboards, bathroom, balcony grill, under the beds. Nothing. Then Denial noticed something scratched into the wooden frame of the second bed. A name, Rafi Malik. Below it, a date, 5 years earlier. The warden told everyone to leave, but Denial didn't. He kept pushing. "What happened in this room?" he asked. The warden looked old suddenly, tired. He said Rafi had been a student there years ago. Quiet boy, no trouble. He lived in room 217. One winter night, he died in that room. There had been an electrical heater, bad wiring, smoke. No one noticed until morning. No screams, no banging, just silence. After that, they stopped assigning roommates to 217. Eventually, people forgot. New staff came. Old records got buried. The room was used again when admissions increased. I asked the warden why he gave me that room if he knew. He didn't look at me. "I thought it was over," he said. That answer still makes me angry. The police came, but there wasn't much they could do. They checked the unknown number. It wasn't registered properly. The photos on my phone somehow disappeared before I could show them, even though Denial swore he had seen them. By sunrise, my father was on his way. I stayed in the common room until he arrived. I didn't go back upstairs. I didn't care about my clothes, books, laptop, anything. But my father insisted we collect everything. So we went to room 217 with the warden and security guard. The room looked normal. Sunlight came through the dusty window. Someone outside was sweeping the courtyard. A pressure cooker whistled from the mess kitchen. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. Then I saw the second bed. The black backpack was back underneath it. Nobody moved. The warden whispered something under his breath. My father pulled me behind him and told the guard to remove it. The guard bent down, reached for the bag, and froze. "What?" my father said. The guard slowly pulled out a notebook. It was old, swollen from damp, pages yellow at the edges. On the first page was written, "Rafi Malik, room 217. The warden tried to take it, but my father snatched it first. Most pages were normal. Class notes, timetables, random numbers. But near the end, the writing changed. Short sentences, messy handwriting. I told them the heater smells wrong. No one listens. My roommate left. Room is cold. Someone is sitting on Ion's bed. I stopped breathing. Ion. My name. Written 5 years before I ever came to that college. My father closed the notebook and said, "We're leaving." That was the last time I stepped inside room 217. I transferred to another hostel 2 weeks later, then eventually moved into a small apartment with 2 cousins. People told me the story got exaggerated. Some said denial, and I made it up for attention. Some said the warden planted the notebook. Some said Rafi never existed at all. But I know what I saw, and I know what it feels like to wake up at 3 a.m. because someone in the room has said your name. It's been years now. I still can't sleep with my back to an open room. I don't like shared rooms. I check under beds even when I know it's childish. If I hear a key turning slowly in a lock, my whole body goes cold. Even after escaping, even with the safety of police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Because the last night before I left the hostel, while my father was loading my bags into the car, I looked up at room 217. Rafi was standing at the window. Gray hoodie, pale face, one hand pressed flat against the glass. And behind him, for just a second, I saw someone sitting on my old bed. Someone I didn't recognize. Another boy, head lowered, waiting. That's the thing nobody tells you about places like that. Sometimes a room doesn't stay empty just because someone died there. Sometimes it starts looking for someone new. Story 3. Have you ever heard someone crying in a place where no one is supposed to be? I don't mean the kind of crying you hear through a wall, or from a kid in another room, or someone trying to hide it in a bathroom stall. I mean crying coming from a locked room that everyone swears is empty. My name is Imran. I was 16 when this happened, and at the time I was living in a boys' hostel attached to a private college in Murree, Pakistan. This was a few years ago, back when my parents thought sending me away for school would make me more responsible. Honestly, life there was boring most of the time. We woke up early, froze during morning assembly, went to classes, came back, ate watery dal, studied under tube lights that flickered like they were tired of living, and then slept in long rooms with metal beds lined against the walls. Our dorm was on the second floor of an old building. It had cracked green paint, narrow corridors, and washrooms at the far end that always smelled like damp concrete and cheap fennel. There were 6 washrooms in a row. The last one was always locked. No one used it. No one talked about it much either. The warden, Mr. Rashid, said the plumbing was broken and told us to stay away from it. And we did, at least until the crying started. The first time I heard, it was around 2 a.m. I had woken up because my roommate, Denial, was shaking my shoulder. "Imran," he whispered. "Listen." At first, I heard nothing except rain tapping against the windows and someone snoring from the bed near the door. Then I heard it, a girl crying, soft, broken, like someone trying not to be heard. I sat up slowly. In a boys' hostel, at 2 in the morning, hearing a girl cry from the washroom corridor is not something your brain accepts right away. I whispered, "Who is that?" Denial didn't answer. His face looked pale in the blue light from the window. We stepped into the corridor with 2 other boys who had also woken up. The sound was clearer there. It was coming from the locked washroom, the last door. We stood about 10 feet away from it, all of us barefoot, all of us pretending we were braver than we were. "Hello," Denial called. The crying stopped. That made it worse. For a few seconds, the whole corridor went silent. Then something tapped the inside of the door. Once, twice. Then a whisper came through. "Please." My heart sank into my stomach. One of the boys, Hamza, ran downstairs to call the warden. The rest of us stayed there, staring at that locked door like it might open by itself. Mr. Rashid arrived wearing slippers and a shawl, angry at first, until he heard the sound too. The crying had started again. He told us to move back. His hands were shaking when he unlocked the door. I remember the click of the key. I remember how cold the air felt. The door opened inward. The washroom was empty. No girl, no boy, no one hiding behind the door. Just a cracked sink, a broken mirror, and water dripping from the tap into a stained bucket. Mr. Rashid cursed under his breath and stepped inside with a flashlight. He checked the window. It was shut from the inside, rusted so badly it probably hadn't moved in years. Then Hamza pointed at the floor. There were wet footprints, small ones, bare feet. They started inside the washroom and went out into the corridor. Nobody spoke. The footprints crossed the hallway, past every bed in our dorm, and stopped beside mine, right beside my bed. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Mr. Rashid told us it was a prank. He said someone had spilled water and made footprints with their hands or shoes. He shouted at everyone, checked our feet, checked under beds, even made us stand in a line like criminals. But no one's feet were wet, and the footprints were too clear. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept staring at the floor beside my bed, where the last print had dried into a faint gray outline. For the next few days, nothing happened. Classes went on. People joked about it. Some boys said the hostel was haunted. Others said seniors were messing with us. I tried to convince myself it had been a prank too. Then I found the first thing under my pillow. A wet strand of black hair. Long, almost a foot. I had short hair. Everyone in my room had short hair. I threw it away before anyone saw because I didn't want to become the hostel's entertainment. I told myself it came from laundry or a broom, or maybe it was already there and I hadn't noticed. That's what you do when something scares you. You explain it away badly and hope the explanation sticks. But 2 nights later, I woke up to someone standing beside my bed. I didn't see a face, just a shape. Thin, still, close enough that I could hear breathing. I blinked hard, thinking I was dreaming. The shape moved away from me and slipped into the corridor. I sat up so fast my blanket fell to the floor. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The corridor was empty, but the floor was wet. Not everywhere, just a trail of footprints. From my bed to the locked washroom. The door was closed again. Locked. The next morning I told Denial. He didn't laugh. He looked at me for a long time and said, "I heard someone walking last night too." That was when things stopped feeling like a hostile ghost story and started feeling personal. For the next week, I barely slept. Every sound woke me up. Pipes knocking, wind under the door, someone turning over in bed. Then the note started. The first one was folded inside my chemistry book. It said, "Why didn't you open the door?" The handwriting was uneven, like someone had written it with their left hand. I showed it to Denial. He told me to take it to the warden. Mr. Rashid barely looked at it. "You boys watch too many videos," he said. "Focus on exams." That made me angry, but part of me was relieved. Adults dismissing things makes them feel smaller somehow. Until the second note came. This one was inside my shoe. It was wet. It said, "I came to your bed." I didn't show anyone that one. I don't know why. Maybe because I was scared they'd think I wrote it myself. Maybe because saying it out loud would make it real. The turning point happened on a Thursday night. Rain had been falling all evening, and the whole building smelled damp. The power went out around midnight, which wasn't unusual. We all groaned and complained, then slowly the room went quiet. I was lying awake, watching shadows move across the ceiling whenever lightning flashed. Then I heard crying. Again, from the washroom. But this time it wasn't far away. It was coming from inside our dorm. At first, I thought someone was crying in their sleep. Then I heard a whisper. "Imran." My body went completely stiff. The voice came from under my bed. I couldn't breathe. I lay there, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, too scared to move even a finger. Then something touched the underside of my mattress. Once, slowly, like fingers pressing up from below. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone would hear it. I forced myself to roll off the bed and landed hard on the floor. Denial woke up and whispered, "What happened?" I didn't answer. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it under the bed. Nothing. No person. No girl. No ghost. Just the metal frame, my bag, and a wet patch on the concrete floor. Then the dorm door clicked shut. Everyone woke up after that because I shouted. We ran to the door, locked from the outside. That was impossible. The latch was outside the room, but only the warden and staff were supposed to have keys to the corridor gates. Denial started banging on the door. "Open it, sir, open." Then from the corridor we heard footsteps. Bare feet, wet slaps against the floor. Slow, coming closer, stopping outside our door. Nobody spoke, nobody moved. A shadow passed under the gap. Then a voice whispered right against the wood. "Don't open it." I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. But we didn't have the key. Hamza started crying. Someone screamed for the warden. Then we heard another sound. A man coughing, keys jingling. The latch opened. Mr. Rashid stood outside, furious and half asleep. "What is wrong with you people?" Behind him, the corridor was empty, but the locked washroom door was open, and inside it, sitting on the floor, was my pillow, soaked in water. After that, my father came the next day. I had called him at dawn and begged him to take me home. At first, he thought I was trying to escape exams. Then he saw my face and stopped arguing. The school said nothing strange had happened. Mr. Rashid said we were creating drama. The principal told my father boys in hostels often make stories. But while my father packed my bag, Denial pulled me aside. He looked awful. He said, "Don't come back." Then he handed me something. It was a small black and white photo. Old, creased, damp at the corners. It showed our dorm room years ago, before the walls were repainted. There were boys standing in rows. And at the back, near the washroom corridor, there was a girl. She looked about our age. Long black hair, school uniform, bare feet. Her face was scratched out. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "She was never found." I asked Denial where he got it. He said it had been under my mattress. I left that day. I never went back to that hostel. Years later, I searched online, asked old students, even messaged a few people who had studied there before me. Most ignored me. One older guy replied and said there had been rumors about a staff member's daughter who disappeared from the hostel building long before our time. No record, no proof, just rumors. Maybe he was lying. Maybe Denial planted the photo. Maybe all of it was some sick hostel prank that went too far. That's what I tell myself when I need to sleep. But sometimes, especially when it rains, I still wake up in the middle of the night and listen. Because the scariest part was never the locked washroom. It was those wet footprints leading to my bed, and knowing that whatever made them didn't want everyone. It wanted me. Story 4. Have you ever heard your own name called in a room where nobody was supposed to know you were there? I was 19 when this happened, in my second year of college, living in a boys' hostel just outside Murree, Pakistan. I won't name the college because it's still there, and as far as I know, that old hostel building is still being used. I was not the kind of person who believed in ghost stories. Back then, my life was simple. Classes in the morning, chai at the canteen in the evening, assignments copied 5 minutes before submission, and long, cold nights under heavy blankets while the wind hit the windows like someone tapping with their nails. Our hostel was old. Not ancient haunted mansion old. Just old in that depressing government building way. Yellow walls, cracked floors, iron beds, tube lights that flickered for no reason, and bathrooms that always smelled like damp cement. Every night at exactly 10:30, our warden took attendance. His name was Mr. Rafiq. He was a thin man in his late 50s, always wearing a brown sweater vest and rubber slippers. He carried this thick attendance register everywhere, the kind with hard red covers and yellowing pages. We all hated attendance. Everyone had to stand in the corridor outside their rooms while he called out names. Ehsan, present, sir. Bilal, present. Hamza, present. Normal hostel routine. But about 2 weeks after I moved in, I noticed something strange. Mr. Rafiq would finish calling the names from our floor, then pause. His finger would slide lower on the page, and his voice would change slightly. It became quieter. Not scared, just careful. Then he would call 3 more names. Samir Khan, silence. Danish Iqbal, silence. Arif Mahmood, silence. The first night, I thought maybe those boys were absent. But then I noticed nobody reacted. No one laughed. No one said, "Sir, they're not here." Everyone just looked down at the floor or back into their rooms. After attendance, I asked my roommate, Faisal, about it. He was brushing his teeth at the sink, and when I said those names, he stopped. "Don't ask about that," he said. I laughed because I thought he was messing with me. "No, seriously. Who are they?" He rinsed his mouth, wiped his face with a towel, and said, "Old students." "What, they graduated?" He looked at me through the mirror. "No, they died." I remember smiling, waiting for the punchline. But he didn't smile back. He told me there had been a fire in the hostel years ago, before the building was renovated. 3 students got trapped in room 217. Smoke inhalation mostly. The college covered it up badly, parents protested, then eventually everything went quiet. I asked the obvious question. Then why does the warden still call their names? Faisal shrugged, but he looked uncomfortable. Because if he doesn't, things happen. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. At first, nothing happened to me. I heard small things, sure. Everyone did. Footsteps after lights out. A door creaking open somewhere on the second floor. Someone coughing from the empty end of the corridor. But hostels are noisy. Pipes knock. Wood expands. Boys sneak around at night to smoke or use phones. I told myself it was nothing. Then one night, I woke up at 2:17 a.m. That time is burned into my memory because my phone screen was the only light in the room. Faisal was asleep, facing the wall. Outside our door, someone was whispering. Not talking, whispering names. I couldn't make out most of them, but then I heard one clearly. Samir. A pause. Danish. Another pause. Arif. My mouth went dry. Then there was a soft scraping sound, like someone dragging a fingernail down the wood of our door. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe properly. After a few seconds, footsteps moved away down the corridor. Slow, barefoot, wet sounding. In the morning, I checked the door. There were 3 vertical scratches on it. I showed Faisal. He stared at them for a long time and said, "Don't mention this to Rafiq, sir." That annoyed me. Why was everyone acting like staying quiet was normal? So after breakfast, I went to the warden's office. It was a small room near the entrance with a metal desk, dusty files, and a heater that barely worked. Mr. Rafiq was writing something in his register. I asked him about the names. He didn't look up at first. Then he closed the register slowly. "Who told you about them?" I said, "Everyone knows." He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Beta, some routines are kept because they keep peace." That answer made me more irritated than scared. "Sir, they're dead. Why call attendants?" His eyes moved to the corridor behind me, then back to me, "Because they still answer sometimes." I left after that. For the next few days, I tried to ignore it. But once you notice something, you can't unnotice it. Every night, after those 3 names were called, the hostel felt different. The air changed. The boys who joked loudly all evening became quiet. Doors shut faster. No one went to the bathrooms alone after 11. And every night, I watched Mr. Rafiq's face when he called the dead boys. "Samir Khan." Silence. "Danish Iqbal." Silence. "Arif Mahmood." Silence. But on the 7th night, something answered. Not a voice. A knock. One knock from the end of the hallway. Everyone froze. Mr. Rafiq's face went pale, but he continued like nothing happened. He closed the register and told us to go inside. That night, nobody slept early. Around midnight, the power went out. That happened often in winter, but this time the entire hostel went completely silent. No generator, no boys complaining, no footsteps, just wind. Then from somewhere upstairs, I heard a door slam. Faisal sat up immediately. "Don't open our door," he whispered. I wasn't planning to. Then someone knocked. 3 soft knocks. Right on our door. Faisal grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. A voice outside said, "Attendance." It sounded like Mr. Rafiq. But wrong. Too flat. Too close to the door. Like his mouth was pressed against the wood. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I reached for my phone. But Faisal shook his head violently. The voice came again. "Open. Attendance." Then it said my roommate's full name. "Faisal Ahmed?" Faisal's grip tightened. He didn't answer. A few seconds passed. Then the voice said my name. My full name. Slowly, like it was reading from a page. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked softly from the outside, and I realized the handle was turning. Faisal jumped from the bed and pushed the chair under the knob. The turning stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then something on the other side exhaled. Not like a person sighing, like smoke escaping from a burnt room. We stayed like that until morning. At 6 a.m., when the azan sounded from a distant mosque, the power came back. The chair was still wedged under the door. On the floor outside, someone had slipped a piece of paper under the gap. It was torn from the attendance register. There were 4 names written on it. Samir Khan. Danish Iqbal, Arif Mahmood, and mine. Beside my name, in blue ink, someone had written, "Present." I packed my bag that same morning. Faisal didn't stop me. He just sat on his bed, staring at that paper like he had expected this eventually. When I took it to Mr. Rafiq, he looked older than I had ever seen him. He asked where I got it. I told him. For the first time, his hands shook. He opened the register. I still remember the sound of those old pages turning. He stopped near the back. My name had been added to the page with the dead students, not printed with the rest of the hostel list. Written by hand, the same blue ink. Mr. Rafiq closed the book and told me to leave the hostel before sunset. No explanation, no argument, just that. I called my father and lied, saying the hostel was making me sick. He came that afternoon from Rawalpindi, angry at first, but when he saw my face, he stopped asking questions. As we were putting my bag in the car, I looked up at the second-floor window, room 217. The glass was dusty and dark, but behind it, I saw 3 boys standing shoulder to shoulder. They weren't burned. They weren't bloody. They just looked like normal students, pale, still, watching me leave. And behind them, half hidden in the darkness of the room, stood a 4th figure. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I knew. Somehow, I knew it was supposed to be me. I never went back to that hostel. Years passed. I changed colleges, finished my degree, got a job, and tried to convince myself stress had messed with my head. But even now, I hate attendance calls. I hate hearing names read out loud in quiet rooms. And sometimes, when I'm half asleep, I still hear Mr. Rafiq's voice from that corridor. Calm, careful, reading from the register. Samir Khan. Silence. Danish Iqbal? Silence. Arif Mahmood? Silence. Then my name. And somewhere far away, in a cold hallway I left years ago, I hear a voice answer for me. Present. Story 5. Have you ever eaten something that tasted normal, but your body somehow knew it was wrong? I know that sounds strange. Food is food, especially hostel food. Most of the time, it's either too oily, too salty, or cold by the time it reaches your plate. You complain, you eat it anyway, and then you move on with your life. That's how I used to think, until the special dinner. My name is Hamza. I was 19 when this happened, in my 2nd semester at a boys' hostel in Multan. I was studying computer science, though if I'm being honest, most of my time went into surviving assignments, avoiding seniors, and trying to make my monthly allowance last longer than 2 weeks. My family lived in Bahawalpur, so I stayed in the college hostel. It was an old building, probably older than half the teachers. The walls had that faded yellow color that never looks clean no matter how many times it gets painted. The corridors smelled like dust, damp clothes, and cheap body spray. At night, the whole place came alive with slippers slapping against the floor, boys shouting from one room to another, pressure cookers whistling in the mess kitchen, and someone always playing songs on a small Bluetooth speaker. It was ordinary. That's the part one want you to understand. Nothing about that hostel felt haunted at first. It felt annoying, crowded, loud, sometimes disgusting, but not evil. The mess was behind the main building, connected by a narrow cement path. Every evening, we'd line up with steel plates while the cook, whom everyone called Bashir Cha-Cha, stood behind the counter with his big aluminum pots. He was quiet, but not unfriendly, maybe in his late 50s. Thin face, gray beard, always wearing the same stained white cap. He had worked there for years, according to the seniors. Most nights, dinner was the same kind of food. Lentils, rice, watery curry, sometimes chicken if the college felt generous. But once every month, the notice board would say, "Special dinner tonight." And everyone got excited, because special dinner meant meat. Not a lot, but enough to make hostel students act like it was Eve. The first special dinner I saw was on a Thursday night in February. It was cold outside, the kind of dry cold that makes your fingers stiff, and the mess hall windows were fogged up from all the steam. Boys were laughing, pushing, telling each other to hurry up. I remember the smell before I saw the food. Rich, spicy, heavy, like slow-cooked meat, black pepper, cloves, and something smoky underneath. My roommate, Saad, nudged me and said, "Bro, don't miss this. Best thing they serve all month." I took a plate. Bashir Cha-Cha looked at me longer than usual. "You're new," he said. "Second semester," I replied. He gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Then eat properly tonight." He placed a large spoonful of dark curry onto my plate. I almost ate it. I really did. But just as I was about to sit down, my phone rang. It was my mother. She rarely called during dinner unless something was important, so I stepped outside. She just wanted to ask if I had taken my medicine for a cough I'd had that week. It took maybe 5 minutes. When I came back, my plate was gone. One of the cleaners had taken it, thinking I had finished. I was irritated, but the line was too long now, and I didn't feel like waiting again. So I bought a packet of chips from the canteen and went back to my room. That missed plate probably saved me. At first, nothing strange happened. Everyone who ate the special dinner looked normal. Full, sleepy, happy. Saad came back rubbing his stomach and said, "You missed it, idiot." That was actually good. But around midnight, I woke up to him sitting on the edge of his bed. The room was dark except for the blue light from the charger near the switchboard. Saad was facing the door, not moving, not scrolling his phone, just sitting. "Saad," I said. He didn't answer. I thought maybe he was half asleep. Then he whispered, "Did you hear the bell?" "What bell?" He turned his head slowly toward me. His eyes looked open too wide. "The dinner bell." I laughed a little because I was uncomfortable. "Bro, go to sleep." He lay back down without another word. The next morning, he didn't remember it. I told myself it was nothing. People talk in their sleep. Hostel students are tired. I had seen guys wake up and start looking for their shoes while still dreaming. But then it happened again. Not just with Saad, with others. Over the next few days, boys who had eaten that dinner started acting strange in small ways. Nothing dramatic. Nothing you could report. Just enough to notice. They stopped eating breakfast. They'd sit in class staring at the whiteboard even after the lecture ended. Some of them started waking up at the same time every night. 3:13 a.m. I know because Saad's alarm kept going off then. He claimed he never said it. One night, after the third time it happened, I grabbed his phone and checked. There was no alarm saved. Still at 3:13, his phone lit up and rang. Not with a normal ringtone. With a sound like a metal spoon tapping against a steel plate. Ting, ting, ting. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Because outside our room, other doors were opening, one by one. I got up and cracked our door open. The corridor was dim, lit by one flickering tube light near the stairs. 4 boys were walking toward the mess building. Barefoot, silent. Saad stood behind me. I jumped when I saw him. "Where are they going?" I whispered. He looked past me into the corridor. "To eat," he said. Then he stepped forward. I grabbed his arm. "What are you doing?" His skin was cold. Not cool, cold. He looked down at my hand, like he didn't understand why I was touching him. Then he said very softly, "He gets angry when we miss it." "Who?" Saad blinked. Then his face changed. He looked confused, scared even. "Why am I standing here?" he asked. I pulled him back into the room and locked the door. Neither of us slept after that. The next morning, I went to the warden. He was a heavy man with tired eyes who always smelled of tea and cigarettes. I told him students were walking to the mess at night. I told him Saad was acting weird. I told him about the alarm. He barely listened. "Boys do nonsense," he said. "Exams are coming. Stress." "Sir, they were barefoot." "So, maybe prank." I wanted to argue, but I could already see he had placed me into the category of dramatic first-year hostel boy. When I told Saad to come with me and explain, he refused. And worse, he got angry. Not normal angry. Quiet angry. He sat on his bed, staring at me, and said, "Don't talk about the food again." I remember the way he said it. Flat, like someone else had borrowed his mouth. After that, I started watching the mess more carefully. Bashir Chacha worked alone most evenings. He chopped onions behind the kitchen window, washed pots, stirred huge pans of curry. Nothing unusual. But every night after 11 p.m., when everyone else had left, he would go back into the kitchen. The first time I followed him, I kept my distance. The mess hall was dark, but the kitchen had a yellow bulb glowing inside. I stood outside near the water tank, hidden behind the wall. Bashir Chacha was not cooking. He was setting plates. 6 steel plates, placed in a circle on the floor. In the middle, he put a bowl of something dark. Then he lowered his head and started whispering. I couldn't hear the words properly. Only one line, repeated again and again. Eat and stay. Eat and stay. Eat and stay. My heart sank into my stomach as the back door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Because the whispering stopped. Bashir Chacha lifted his head, and without turning around, he said, "You missed dinner." I ran. I don't remember deciding to run. My body just moved. I slipped on the wet cement near the water tank, scraped my palm, got up, and kept going until I reached the hostel stairs. When I looked back, he was standing outside the mess door. Not chasing me, just watching. The next day, I tried to convince Saad to leave the hostel for a few days. Come with me to my uncle's house. Go home. Anything. He smiled at me in a way I didn't like. You're hungry, he said. No, I'm not. You will be. That afternoon, I found something under my pillow. A piece of cooked meat wrapped in newspaper. Cold. Covered in thick, dark gravy. I threw it in the toilet and flushed 3 times. That night, I locked our door, pushed my study table against it, and stayed awake with a cricket bat in my lap. Saad slept, or pretended to. At 3:13, the tapping sound started again. Ting, ting, ting. This time, it didn't come from Saad's phone. It came from inside the walls, then from the corridor, then from under my bed. I stood up so fast my chair fell backward. Saad sat up. He looked at the locked door, then at me. Open it, he said. No. His voice stayed calm. Hamza opened the door. No. He got out of bed. I held the bat tighter. Don't. For a second, I thought he might attack me. Instead, he began crying. His whole face twisted like he was fighting something inside himself. Please, he whispered. I can smell it. That scared me more than if he had shouted. I grabbed my phone and called Denial, a senior I trusted. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. Then I called my father. He picked up half asleep, and the moment I heard his voice, I started shaking. Abu, something is wrong here. Before I could explain, someone knocked on our door. 3 slow knocks. Then Bashir Chacha's voice came from the hallway. Beta, I brought food. Saad started walking toward the door. I shoved him back. He stumbled, hit the bed, and began sobbing into his hands. The knocking came again. Open. He doesn't like waiting. I whispered to my father, call the police. Please. What happened? He asked, suddenly awake. But I couldn't answer, because the door handle started turning. I had locked it. I had pushed the table against it. Still, the handle turned. Slowly. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Then the table moved. Just an inch. The door pushed inward. I screamed. Not words. Just a sound. That woke the whole corridor. Doors opened. Boys shouted. Someone yelled for the guard. The pressure broke. The door stopped moving. When the security guard came running, Bashir Chacha was gone. But outside our door on the floor was a steel plate. Dark curry, still steaming. The police arrived around 40 minutes later because my father kept calling them, and then called a relative who knew someone at the station. By then, the warden was furious, embarrassed, and trying to make it look like a misunderstanding. But Denial had woken up too, so had half the floor, and some of them admitted they'd been hearing the tapping sound for nights. The police searched the mess kitchen. At first, they found nothing strange. Pots, rice sacks, spices, old freezers. normal mess stuff. Then one officer noticed a locked storage room behind the kitchen. Bashir Chacha claimed it was for broken furniture. He refused to give the key. That was when things changed. They broke the lock. Inside, the air smelled rotten, but not exactly like spoiled food. More like damp earth and old smoke. There were plates stacked along one wall. Dozens of them. Each plate had a name scratched into the metal. Student names. Some current. Some old. Some I didn't recognize. At the back of the room was a framed photograph covered in dust. It showed a man standing in front of the hostel mess, maybe 50 or 60 years ago. Same building. Same kitchen entrance. Under it, written in faded ink, was a name. Master Kareem. The warden went pale when he saw it. Later, we learned the story in pieces. Master Kareem had been the first cook of that hostel decades earlier. Students loved him, apparently. He cooked during wars, strikes, floods, everything. Then one year, during a protest, the hostel mess caught fire. Kareem was trapped inside. He died there. After that, strange things supposedly happened in the mess. Food spoiling overnight. Students hearing plates being arranged after midnight. A few boys getting sick after eating late-night leftovers. The college covered it up because colleges cover up anything that can damage their name. Bashir Chacha had started working there years later. Nobody knew exactly when the special dinners began, but the old cleaners said he was obsessed with Kareem. Said he talked to the photo. Said he believed the hostel only stayed peaceful if the old cook was fed through the students. The police questioned him for hours. He never explained the food properly. He only kept saying, "I kept him calm." That sentence still follows me. I kept him calm. They took Bashir Chacha away that night. But here's the part one don't like telling people. After he left, the mess kitchen burned again. Not fully, just one section near the old storage room. The fire started at 3:13 a.m. while police were still on campus. No one could explain how. The gas lines were shut. The stoves were off. And in the ashes, they found steel plates arranged in a circle. 6 plates. One bowl in the middle. Empty. Saad went home the next morning. He didn't come back for almost 2 months. When he did, he was thinner and quieter. He told me he didn't remember most of that week, only that he had dreams of sitting in a dark kitchen while someone fed him with a spoon. I moved out before the semester ended. My parents didn't argue after hearing everything. My father came himself, packed my things, and didn't let me enter the mess building again. It's been years now. I still don't eat hostel food. I don't care if people laugh. I don't eat anything called special dinner anywhere. Weddings, hostels, office parties. If the food smells too rich, too smoky, too familiar, my stomach turns. Sometimes the scariest things don't come running at you in the dark. Sometimes they're served to you on a steel plate by someone smiling gently, telling you to eat before it gets cold. And if your gut tells you not to take a bite, listen. It might be the only thing keeping you alive. Story 6. Have you ever watched a CCTV clip and felt like the camera saw less than you did? I know that sounds strange. Cameras are supposed to make things clearer. They're supposed to prove what happened. That's why people trust them more than memory, more than statements, more than gut feelings. But I'm telling you now, there are some things a camera can't catch. Or maybe it catches exactly enough to make you wish it hadn't. I was 20 when this happened, in my second year at a private college in Abbottabad. I was living in the boys' hostel because my family lived too far away for daily travel. My father ran a small medical store, my mother taught at a school, and I was the first person in my family trying to get a proper degree. So I was not there to have fun. Most days were boring in the way student life usually is. Classes, assignments, cheap tea, bad Wi-Fi, and late-night noise from boys who thought shouting in the corridor at 1 a.m. was a personality. The hostel itself was ordinary. For floors, white tiles, peeling paint, iron railings, and long corridors that smelled like floor cleaner in the morning and wet socks by night. Every floor had 2 CCTV cameras, one near the stairs and one near the bathroom side. But on the second floor, there was a blind spot. It was between room 214 and the old storage room. Just a narrow patch of corridor the camera didn't cover because of the angle. You could walk into that little gap for maybe 2 or 3 seconds before appearing on the other camera. Everyone knew about it. Boys used it to smoke, hide snacks, make phone calls, or quickly pass things they weren't supposed to have. It was such a normal part of hostel life that nobody thought twice about it, until Bilal disappeared there. Bilal was my roommate's friend, not mine. He was loud, always laughing, always borrowing chargers and never returning them. The kind of guy who annoyed you, but still somehow made the room feel less empty. One Thursday night, around 11:40, he left his room to get water from the cooler. He never came back. At first, everyone thought he was messing around. Maybe he had gone to another room. Maybe he had sneaked out. Maybe he was on the roof using his phone. His roommate, Tamor, kept calling him. No answer. By 1 a.m., people were checking bathrooms, stairwells, the roof, the canteen, even outside the hostel gate. The warden was angry at first, then worried, then scared. The next morning, police came. That was when they checked the CCTV. I wasn't supposed to see the footage, but one of the hostel boys knew the guard, and the clip spread quietly from phone to phone like some forbidden thing. The footage showed Bilal walking down the second-floor corridor, holding his empty water bottle. He was wearing a black hoodie and slippers. He looked normal. Sleepy, maybe. He passed room 212, scratched his head, and walked toward the blind spot. Then he entered it, and he never came out. That was it. No jump cut. No glitch. No shadow. No person grabbing him. He just walked into the part the camera couldn't see, and the next camera, which should have caught him 2 seconds later, showed nothing. Just an empty corridor. I remember watching it 3 times, waiting for my brain to understand. It didn't. The police treated it like a runaway case at first. They asked if Bilal had enemies, if he had a girlfriend, if he owed money, if he had family problems. His parents came the next day, and I still remember his mother sitting on the hostel steps, holding one of his shoes, crying so quietly it was worse than screaming. The warden kept saying, "We are cooperating fully." The boys kept saying, "He vanished." And me? I told myself there had to be a logical answer. Maybe he slipped through a side door. Maybe there was a maintenance hatch. Maybe he doubled back somehow. But that corridor had no door in the blind spot except the storage room. And the storage room was locked from the outside. For a few days, the hostel felt dead. Nobody joked. Nobody went anywhere alone after midnight. The blind spot became this thing everyone avoided without admitting we were avoiding it. Then small things started happening. The first was the smell. Not every night. Just sometimes. A damp, old smell near the second-floor blind spot, like rainwater trapped inside walls. It didn't smell like our hostel. Our hostel smelled bad, but familiar. This was different. Cold cement. Dust. Something shut for a long time. Then came the sounds. I was going to the bathroom one night around 2 a.m. when I heard boys talking near the blind spot. I stopped because everyone had been avoiding that area. The voices were low, like a group whispering in a room with the door almost closed. I couldn't make out words, only the rhythm of conversation. Then one voice laughed. It was Bilal's laugh. I swear on everything, it was his exact laugh. That short, breathy laugh he used when he was trying not to be loud. My whole body locked up. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. I went back to my room without using the bathroom. The next day, I told my roommate, Horace. He didn't laugh. That scared me more than if he had. He said, "Don't go near that place at night." I asked him why. He looked at the door, then lowered his voice. Because Bilal wasn't the first. I thought he meant another student had disappeared before. He said no, not disappeared, seen. Apparently years earlier, before our batch, students used to complain about seeing people in that blind spot. Not ghosts exactly, just students who didn't belong there. Boys wearing old uniforms. A cleaner nobody had hired. A guard standing at the end of the corridor, even though the Real guard was downstairs. One guy claimed he saw himself. I told Horace that was stupid. He said, maybe. But after Bilal, I'm not testing it. For almost a week, nothing major happened. Then Bilal's phone connected to the hostel Wi-Fi. That was the thing that changed everything. It happened at around 12:18 a.m. The network admin was one of the senior students, and he saw Bilal's phone pop up on the device list. Everyone rushed to the second floor, thinking maybe he had come back or someone had his phone. The signal was strongest near the blind spot. No phone was found. Police came again. They searched rooms. They checked lockers. They looked inside the storage room. Empty, or almost empty. There was dust on the floor, broken chairs, old exam desks, and a cracked mirror leaning against the back wall. One officer kept shining his torch around and saying, "There must be a hidden opening." There wasn't. After they left, the warden ordered the blind spot area sealed with a metal grill. That lasted 2 nights. On the 3rd morning, the grill was found open. Not broken, open. The lock was hanging neatly on the side, still locked. That same day, a printed paper was slipped under my room door. At first, I thought it was a notice. It wasn't. It was a screenshot from CCTV. A still image of the 2nd floor corridor. In the picture, I was standing near the blind spot. But I had never stood there. Not at that time. Not wearing those clothes. In the photo, I was facing the camera, but my face was slightly blurred, like I had moved at the wrong moment. At the bottom of the print, someone had written in blue pen, "You already came through once." My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. I took the paper to Horace. He stared at it for a long time. Then he said, "This isn't funny." "I know." "No," he said. "I mean, this isn't from our printer." I asked how he knew. He pointed to the paper. It was thicker, yellowish, almost old. Not like the cheap white paper from the hostel office. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound felt close. Every footstep outside our door made my stomach tighten. Around 3 a.m., I heard someone walking slowly in the corridor. Then a soft knock came at our door. One knock, then another. Horace woke up instantly. Neither of us spoke. A voice outside whispered, "Open it." It sounded like Bilal. Not exactly. Like someone trying to sound like him. Horace grabbed my arm and mouthed, "Don't." The voice came again. "Bro, please." I came back wrong. I felt my hands start shaking. Then it said my name. Not loudly. Just enough. "I saw you there." I don't know what came over me, but I stood up. Horace hissed, "Are you mad?" I moved to the door and looked through the peephole. The corridor was empty. But at the far end, near the blind spot, a boy was standing with his back to me. Black hoodie, slippers, holding an empty water bottle. Bilal. He turned slightly, not enough to show his face, then walked into the blind spot. And didn't come out. I should have stayed inside. I know that now. But when you're 20, tired, scared, and desperate for an answer, you do stupid things. I opened the door. Horace whispered my name behind me, but I was already in the corridor. The lights were dim. The whole floor had that cold blue glow from weak tube lights. I walked slowly toward the blind spot, every part of me begging me to stop. The street outside the hostel looked ordinary from the corridor window, quiet, even comforting. But my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. When I reached the blind spot, the air changed. It wasn't dramatic. No thunder, no screaming. Just a drop in temperature, so sudden my breath caught. The corridor seemed longer. I looked back. My room door was still there, but it looked farther away than it should have been. Then I heard a door open beside me. The storage room. But it wasn't locked anymore. It was slightly open, and from inside came a pale yellow light. I pushed it with 2 fingers. The room beyond was not the storage room. It was another corridor. Same tiles, same walls, same hostel layout, but older. The paint was darker, almost gray. The tube lights flickered slowly. The air smelled like damp paper and rust. Somewhere far away, a ceiling fan turned with a dry clicking sound. I stepped back, but the corridor behind me was gone. Where my hostel should have been, there was only a closed wall. I couldn't breathe properly. I told myself I was dreaming. Then I heard boys laughing from one of the rooms. Normal laughter. Hostile laughter. I walked forward because there was nowhere else to go. Room numbers were painted on the doors, but they were wrong. Some repeated. Some were scratched out. I saw room 214 3 times. Then room 209. Then room 214 again. At the end of the corridor, a notice board hung crookedly. There were photos pinned to it. Student ID photos. Dozens of them. Some old. Some new. Bilal's was there. So was mine. Under my photo, written in blue ink, were 2 words. Not settled. That was when I heard footsteps behind me. Slow. Slippered. Wet against the floor. I turned. Bilal stood halfway down the corridor. Or something wearing him did. His hoodie was the same, his hair was the same, but his face looked unfinished somehow. Not damaged. Just wrong. Like someone had remembered the basic idea of his features, but not the life behind them. His eyes were too calm. Too empty. "Don't stay," he said. His voice came out in pieces, like bad audio. I couldn't move. He lifted one hand and pointed behind me. "Run when the bell rings." Before I could ask anything, a loud hostile bell rang through the corridor. Once. Every door opened. Not all at once. One by one. Inside each room, I saw students standing in the dark, facing the hallway. Some looked normal. Some looked like old photographs come to life. Some looked almost like people I knew. One of them looked exactly like Horace. He smiled at me. That broke me. I ran. I ran past the notice board, past repeating room numbers, past doors opening wider and wider. Hands reached from inside rooms, not grabbing hard, just brushing my sleeves, my shoulders, my back. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling, as I fumbled for the first door handle I saw. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. The door opened into the storage room. Our storage room. Dark, dusty, full of broken chairs. I fell forward onto the floor, coughing, crying, and kicking backward like a child. Behind me, the door slammed shut. Horace found me there a few minutes later with the warden and 2 guards. Apparently, he had called them after I disappeared from the corridor. To him, I had been gone for less than 30 seconds. To me, it had been at least 10 minutes. Maybe more. The warden didn't ask many questions. That was the worst part. He just looked at me sitting on the floor, then looked at the blind spot and said, "You saw it." Not a question. A statement. The next day, I left the hostel. My parents thought I had a nervous breakdown. The college said stress and lack of sleep could cause hallucinations. The police never found Bilal. Officially, he remained a missing person. But before I left, Horace showed me one final thing. He had copied the CCTV from the night I went missing. In the footage, I walked out of my room and toward the blind spot. Then I vanished. For 27 seconds, the corridor stayed empty. Then I came crawling out of the storage room on my hands and knees, even though the door had been locked from outside. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened at the very end of the clip. After the guards carried me away, the corridor was empty again. Then someone stepped out of the blind spot. Me. Another me. Standing there in the same clothes, watching the direction they had taken me. He stood completely still for almost 10 seconds. Then he looked directly at the CCTV camera and smiled. "I don't live in hostels anymore. I don't like corridors. I don't like blind spots and cameras. I don't even like walking past dark doorways where I can't see the other side." Years have passed, but sometimes my phone connects to unknown Wi-Fi networks with names that don't make sense. Hostel_2F, room 214, Bilal_returned. And every time it happens, I turn off my phone and leave wherever I am. Because I don't think that place was a ghost. I think it was another version of the hostel. One that keeps copying people until it gets them right. And somewhere in that other corridor, there may still be a version of me waiting for his chance to come out. Sometimes the scariest part isn't disappearing. It's coming back and realizing something else came back with you. Story 7. Have you ever seen someone watching you from a place they had no reason to be? Not through a phone screen, not in a dream, I mean really watching you. Standing still in the dark, night after night, staring at your window like they already know you're going to look back. My name is Ion. I was 17 when this happened, and at the time I was living in a small private hostel in Lahore while studying for my first-year college exams. It wasn't a fancy place. It was one of those narrow, 3-story buildings squeezed between a printing shop and a pharmacy, with tangled wires hanging over the street and motorbikes parked so close together you had to turn sideways just to walk through. The rooms were small, the beds were old, and in winter the walls felt cold even when the fan was off. But it was normal. That's what I keep coming back to. Everything about that place felt ordinary at first. I shared a room on the second floor with a guy named Samir. He was quiet, but not in a creepy way. More like someone who didn't waste words. He studied late, kept his side of the room clean, and always wore headphones even when he wasn't listening to anything. We weren't friends exactly, but we got along. Every night after dinner, I would sit near the window and study. Our window faced the flat terrace of the building next door. It was an old family house, mostly dark at night, with water tanks on the roof and laundry lines that moved in the wind. The first time I saw her, I thought she was just someone from that house. A girl stood on the terrace, near the water tank, facing my window. She looked about my age, maybe older. Long hair, pale clothes, completely still. I remember lowering my pen and staring back. She didn't wave, didn't move, just watched. After a minute, I pulled the curtain halfway and laughed under my breath, because I felt stupid for getting nervous over a neighbor standing on her own terrace. But the next night, she was there again. Same place, same posture, same blank stare toward my window. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe she came up there to get fresh air. Maybe she was talking on the phone and I couldn't see it. Maybe she wasn't even looking at me. But by the fourth night, I knew she was. Because when I moved from the desk to my bed, her head slowly turned with me. I didn't tell Samir at first. I don't know why. Maybe because I thought he'd make fun of me. Maybe because saying it out loud would make me sound dramatic. Then one night, while I was pretending to study, Samir suddenly said, "Close the curtain." I turned around. He was lying on his bed, facing the wall. "What?" "Close it," he said. I looked back at the terrace. She was there. I felt a cold little drop in my stomach. "You've seen her too?" I asked. Samir didn't answer for a few seconds. Then he said, "Just don't look at her." That should have made me feel better. It didn't. After that, I started closing the curtain before sunset. But the strange thing was, even with the curtain closed, I felt watched. You know that feeling when someone enters a room behind you, and your body notices before your brain does? It was like that every night. Then small things started happening. My notebooks moved. My phone would be on the opposite side of the desk from where I left it. One morning, I woke up and found my curtain slightly open, just enough for a thin line of gray morning light to cut across the floor. Samir said he hadn't touched it. A few nights later, I woke up thirsty. The room was dark except for the streetlight leaking through the curtain. Samir's bed was empty. I sat up slowly. Then I heard whispering from the hallway. I couldn't make out words, just a low voice, careful and soft. I stepped out of bed and moved toward the door. The hallway outside was dim, and at the far end, near the staircase, Samir was standing with his back to me. He was speaking to someone, but there was no one there. At least, no one I could see. "Samir?" I said. He stopped talking. Very slowly, he turned his head. His face was calm. Too calm. "What are you doing?" I asked. He smiled a little and said, "Go back to sleep." I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Because the footsteps were not coming from Samir. They were behind me, from inside our room. I turned around so fast my shoulder hit the doorframe. The room was empty, but the curtain was open, and on the terrace outside, the girl was standing closer than ever, her face tilted toward me. This time, she raised one hand, not waving, pointing, at Samir. My heart sank into my stomach. I turned back toward the hallway. but Samir was already walking toward me. "What did you see?" he asked. His voice was soft, but there was something under it, something sharp. "Nothing," I said. He looked past me into the room, then at the open curtain. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked angry. Not scared, angry. The next day, I called my older cousin Bilal and told him part of the story. Not all of it, just enough. He laughed at first and said, "Bro, you're studying too much. Your brain is melting." But when I told him about Samir talking in the hallway, he got quiet. "Lock your phone," he said. "What?" "Just do it. And check your gallery." I did. At first, nothing looked strange. Then I found a hidden folder. I never made one. Inside were photos of me sleeping. Not one. Many. Some were taken from the foot of my bed. Some from beside my pillow. One was so close you could see the corner of my mouth and my closed eye. My hand started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. The latest photo was from the night before. In the background, behind my sleeping face, the curtain was open. And on the terrace, blurred but visible, the girl was standing there, pointing. I didn't confront Samir. I should have. Maybe. But when you find something like that, your brain doesn't become brave. It becomes small. It starts thinking of every mistake you could make. So I acted normal. That evening, I packed a few clothes into my backpack while Samir was downstairs for dinner. I planned to go to Bilal's place and tell the warden from there. But when I reached the door, it wouldn't open. The key turned halfway and stopped. I tried again. Nothing. Then Samir's voice came from behind me. "Going somewhere?" I turned. He was sitting on his bed. I hadn't heard him come in. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. "I was just going to get notes," I said. Samir looked at my backpack. At night, neither of us moved. Then something hit the window. A light tap. Samir's eyes flicked toward it. Another tap. Then another. The curtain was closed, but I could see a shadow behind it. Samir stood up. "Don't," I said. He ignored me and walked to the window. Before he could touch the curtain, someone outside screamed. Not loudly, not like in movies. It was a short, sharp scream, cut off almost instantly. Samir froze. The power went out. The whole room dropped into darkness. I ran. I slammed my shoulder into the door once, twice, and on the third hit, the lock gave just enough for me to squeeze through. I fell into the hallway, scraped my arm, and sprinted barefoot down the stairs. Behind me, Samir shouted my name. I didn't look back. I ran straight into the street, past the pharmacy, past the tea stall, until I reached the main road and called Bilal with shaking hands. The police came about 40 minutes later. Samir was gone. His cupboard was empty except for 2 notebooks and a cheap black phone. On that phone, they found more photos. Not just of me, other boys too. Some from before I had even moved in. The warden kept saying he had no idea. He said Samir's documents looked real. He said boys come and go all the time. As for the house next door, the one with the terrace, the police checked it. No girl lived there. The family said their daughter had been staying with relatives in another city for months. But the mother looked uneasy when I described the girl. Later, quietly, she told Bilal that years ago, before we moved into that hostel, a girl from their family used to study on that terrace at night. She had complained about someone in the hostel watching her window. Nobody took it seriously. Then she disappeared for 2 days. When she came back, she never spoke clearly about what happened. Her family moved her away soon after. I don't know if that was the same girl I saw. I don't know if she was real or alive or something my mind created because some part of me already knew I was in danger. All I know is this. Every night she stood there, I thought she was the thing I needed to fear. But she was never trying to scare me. She was trying to warn me. It's been years now. I don't live in hostels anymore. I don't leave curtains open at night. I don't sleep in rooms where someone else has the key. And whenever I move into a new place, I check the windows first. Even after escaping, even with the safety of the police lights behind me, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the window. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. Sometimes danger doesn't stand outside your window. Sometimes it sleeps 6 feet away from you, says good morning, borrows your charger, and waits for you to close your eyes. Story 8. Have you ever walked past an old photograph and felt like someone inside it was looking back at you? Not in a dramatic way. Not like in movies, where the eyes move or the frame falls off the wall. I mean that quiet, uncomfortable feeling you get when your body notices something before your mind does. That's what happened to me in my first year of college. My name is Aram. I was 18 at the time, studying business in a college near Rawalpindi. My family lived in Surgodha, so moving into the hostel was supposed to be my first taste of real independence. I was nervous, but mostly excited. I imagined late-night tea, new friends, football in the courtyard, and finally not having my mother ask me every hour if I had eaten. The hostel was old, but not creepy at first. Just old in that normal government building kind of way. Cracked walls, faded paint, dusty notice boards, and ceiling fans that made clicking sounds all night. The bathrooms had broken mirrors, the corridors smelled like wet shoes, and the mess food was bad enough that everyone kept instant noodles in their cupboards. My room was on the second floor, room 209. It had 4 beds. 3 were taken. 1 was empty. When I first walked in with my suitcase, my roommates were already there. Zain was from Karachi, loud and funny. Mustafa was quiet, always wearing headphones. And Denial was the responsible one, the kind of guy who labeled his chargers and folded his clothes properly. The 4th bed was pushed near the window. No mattress cover, no pillow, just a bare mattress with a folded gray blanket at the foot. I pointed at it and said, "Who's sleeping there?" The room went quiet. Not scared quiet, more like annoyed quiet, as if I'd asked something everyone knew not to ask. Denial looked at me and said, "No one." Zain added, "And no one should." I laughed because I thought they were messing with me. "Why? Senior's prank?" Mustafa took off one side of his headphones and said, "Just don't sleep on it." That was all. At first, I didn't care. Hostel boys make rules about everything. Don't use someone's mug. Don't sit on someone's prayer mat. Don't touch the chair by the window because it belongs to some senior who graduated 3 years ago. I figured the empty bed was just one of those stupid traditions. For the first few days, life felt normal. Classes were boring. The mess served watery dal. Zain snored. Mustafa stayed up gaming. Denial woke us for far, even when no one asked him to. But every night, before sleeping, Denial would check the 4th bed. He didn't make it obvious. He would pretend to look for something, or adjust the curtain, or close the window properly. But I noticed. His eyes always went to that bed. One night I joked, "Bro, are you guarding it?" He didn't smile. "Just don't put your stuff there," he said. That was the first time I felt something was off. Because my backpack was on the empty bed. I had thrown it there after class without thinking. Denial picked it up and placed it beside my bed. Not angrily. Carefully. Like my bag had touched something dirty. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone had died there. Maybe it was some hostile rumor. Every old building has a story. I didn't want to be the new guy who got scared over a bed. Then a week later, Zain's cousin came to visit. His name was Ferris. He wasn't staying in the hostel officially, just visiting for one night, because he had an entrance test nearby the next morning. He arrived late, around 11 p.m., with a small backpack and that easy confidence some people have when they don't believe in rules. Denial told him to sleep on the floor mattress. Ferris looked at the empty bed and laughed. "Why would I sleep on the floor when there's a perfectly good bed?" Zain immediately said, "Don't." Ferris grinned. "What, is it haunted?" Nobody laughed. I remember the fan clicking above us. Tick, tick, tick. The corridor outside was full of normal sounds. Boys talking, someone coughing, slippers dragging across the floor. The room itself felt too still. Denial said, "I'm serious. Don't sleep there." Ferris rolled his eyes. "You hostile people are weird." Then he dropped his bag on the empty bed and lay down. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. The footsteps stopped outside our door. 3 soft taps came from the other side. Not a knock, more like fingernails lightly touching wood. Ferris sat up. "Who's there?" No answer. Zane opened the door. The corridor was empty. We all pretended it didn't bother us. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. The room was dark, except for moonlight coming through the window near the empty bed. At first, I didn't know why I was awake. Then I heard a sound. A camera shutter. Click. I opened my eyes properly. Ferris was sitting upright on the empty bed, facing the wall. His back was straight. His hands rested on his knees. The gray blanket was folded beside him, untouched. "Ferris?" I whispered. He didn't move. Then he said, "Don't blink." His voice sounded wrong. Thin. Far away. I reached for my phone, but my hand felt heavy, like I was still half inside a dream. The camera sound came again. Click. This time it came from the wall near the door. There was nothing there, just peeling paint and a small nail where maybe a calendar had once hung. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, Ferris was lying down again. The next morning, his bed was empty. Not just empty, clean. His backpack was gone. His shoes were gone. The bedsheet wasn't wrinkled. It looked like no one had slept there at all. Zane thought he had left early for his test. He called him. The phone rang from under the empty bed. We all froze. Zane bent down and pulled it out. Ferris's phone was there, screen cracked, battery almost dead. His cousin never came back. At first, everyone treated it like a missing person situation. Zane called his family. The warden checked the gate register. Security claimed no one had left after midnight. Ferris's backpack was not found. His ID card was not found. The police came, asked questions, looked bored, then more serious when they realized there was no CCTV on the second-floor corridor. The warden kept saying, maybe he ran away. But why would he leave his phone? Why would he leave before his test? Why did no one see him? That evening, the hostel felt different. The same building, same cracked walls, same boys shouting over cricket scores, but something had shifted. The street outside looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. 2 days later, I noticed the photograph. There was a wall near the hostel office covered with old framed pictures. Batch photos, sports teams, debate competitions, annual dinners. Most students walked past it without looking. I had walked past it every day. But that afternoon, while waiting outside the office with Zane, I looked at one old photograph from maybe the 1980s. It showed a group of students standing in front of the hostel building. The photo was faded brown, the edges yellowed. Most faces were blurry, except one, a boy standing at the far left, wearing a modern black hoodie. Ferris's hoodie. My mouth went dry. "Zane," I said. He looked. For a few seconds, he didn't understand. Then his face changed. He stepped closer to the frame, breathing hard. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." It was Ferris. Not someone who looked like him. Ferris. Same haircut, same hoodie, same small scar near his eyebrow. He was standing among students who should have been older than our fathers, staring directly into the camera. His expression was blank, like he had been told not to move. Zane grabbed the frame off the wall and shouted for the warden. Everything after that became chaos. The warden went pale when he saw it. That was the first thing that scared me more than the photo itself. He didn't look confused. He looked guilty. He told us to come into his office. Denial was already there. That made my stomach drop. Denial wouldn't look at me. The warden locked the door and said, "This matter should not spread." Zane lost it. He started yelling, asking where Ferris was, threatening police, media, everything. The warden kept rubbing his forehead. Finally, Denial spoke. I told him not to sleep there. The room went silent. That was when we learned the story. Room 209 had always had 4 beds, but for years, only 3 students were assigned to it. The 4th bed was never officially removed because the hostel was old, records were messy, and nobody wanted questions. The rumor was that sometime in the late 1970s, A student slept there during winter break when the hostel was almost empty. In the morning, he was gone, but his face appeared in a hostel photograph from years earlier. At first, people thought it was a prank. Then it happened again. A guest slept there, gone by morning. A new face in an old picture. Then again years later. The college hid it every time, because families accepted easier lies. Runaway, expelled, transferred, mental health issues, anything but the truth. I asked the warden, "Why didn't you remove the bed?" He looked at me with tired eyes. "We tried." Nobody spoke. He said maintenance workers had carried it out twice. Both times, it was back in the room by morning. Once they burned the mattress behind the mess kitchen. The next day, the bed was there again, with a clean gray blanket folded at the foot. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. That's how I felt sitting in that office, because the door really did click shut behind us. None of us had touched it. The warden stopped talking. From the hallway outside, we heard it. Click. A camera shutter. Then another. Click. Zane started crying. Not loudly, just quietly, like he couldn't control it anymore. The warden opened the office door, and we all stepped out. The photograph wall looked the same at first. Then denial pointed. A newer photo had changed. It was our hostel cricket team from the year before. Boys in blue jerseys, standing in 2 rows. At the back, between 2 seniors, Ferris was standing again. Still in the black hoodie. Still staring straight ahead. Zane ran at the wall and smashed the frame with his fist. Glass fell everywhere. The warden shouted. Denial pulled him back, but the photograph underneath didn't tear. Not even when Zane tried. That night, nobody slept in room 209. We all stayed in the common room. The warden called the police again, but what could he say? A missing boy was appearing in old photographs? Even if he said it, who would believe him? Around 2:40 a.m., the power went out. The common room went black. A few boys groaned. Someone turned on a phone flashlight, and for a second everything felt normal again. Then we heard bed springs, creaking. From upstairs, room 209. Denial whispered, "No one go up." Of course, Zane went. He was out of his mind with guilt and fear. He kept saying maybe Ferris was back, maybe he was trapped, maybe we had to help him. I followed him because I didn't want him going alone. That was stupid. The second-floor corridor was dark and hot. The air smelled like dust and old wood. Our footsteps sounded too loud. Room 209's door was open. Inside, the 4th bed was no longer empty. Someone was under the gray blanket, completely covered. Zane stepped forward. "Ferris?" No answer. I grabbed his arm. "Don't." He pulled away. The blanket moved slightly, like someone underneath had turned their head. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. But there were no keys. Nothing to lock. Nothing to control. The figure under the blanket whispered, "Take my picture." Zane stopped. The voice was Ferris's. "Please," it said. "I can't move unless you take my picture." Zane took one more step. I grabbed him from behind and pulled as hard as I could. He fought me. He was stronger than me, desperate. We stumbled, hit the cupboard, and the door slammed shut on its own. The room went completely dark. Then the camera shutter came from right beside my ear. Click. I screamed. Zane screamed too. We fell into the corridor as the door flew open again. Denial and 2 security guards were running toward us with flashlights. When they shined the light into the room, the bed was empty. The gray blanket was folded neatly at the foot. But on my phone, which I hadn't even unlocked, there was a new photo. I don't remember taking it. It showed the inside of room 209. All 4 beds. Zane standing near the empty one. Me beside the cupboard. And under the gray blanket, a shape sitting upright. Where its face should have been, there was only a blur. Behind it, near the window, Ferris stood with one hand pressed against the glass. His mouth was open, like he was trying to warn us. I dropped the phone. The next morning, my father came and took me home. Zane's family pulled him out too. He never fully recovered from what happened. We stayed in touch for a while, but he became quieter every month. The last time I spoke to him, he told me he still saw Ferris in photos sometimes. Not always, just in the background. Family weddings, class pictures, once in the reflection of a shop window behind him. The hostel was renovated the next year. Room 209 became storage, officially because of structural issues. But I don't think they removed the bed. I think they just locked the door. It's been years now, and I still hate old photographs. I don't like walking past framed pictures in schools, offices, hostels, restaurants. Anywhere people hang memories on walls and forget to look closely. Because sometimes the past is not finished. Sometimes it is still making space. And sometimes an empty bed is not empty because no one sleeps there. It's empty because it's waiting. Story 9. Have you ever heard your own voice outside your room? Not a recording. Not someone who sounds like you. I mean your voice exactly, using the same little pauses, the same tired way you speak when you've just woken up. I was 19 when it happened, living in a boys' hostel in Lahore during my first year of university. I'm not going to say the name of the university because the hostel is still there and some of the people involved still work there. Back then, my life was ordinary in the most boring way possible. I had morning classes, bad cafeteria food, cheap tea at the corner shop, and long nights pretending to study while actually scrolling on my phone. My parents lived in Multan, and they called almost every night to ask if I was eating properly. I always said yes, even though most dinners were just par of the rolls and instant noodles. The hostel was old, but not scary at first. It had 4 floors, narrow corridors, metal doors painted dull green, and tube lights that buzzed like insects. At night, the building had a certain smell, damp clothes, floor cleaner, and cigarette smoke hidden under cheap air freshener. There was also a bell. It hung near the warden's office downstairs. A large brass bell, the kind you'd expect in an old school. The warden used it for emergencies, inspections, and sometimes when the electricity went out and everyone had to come downstairs. Nobody cared about it until it started ringing at 3 a.m. The first time it happened, I woke up confused, with my blanket half on the floor and my phone glowing beside me. Ding, ding, ding. Not loud like a fire alarm. Slow, heavy, deliberate. My roommate, Samir, sat up on the other bed and whispered, "What the hell?" Outside, doors opened one by one. Boys stepped into the corridor, annoyed and sleepy, asking what was going on. I almost opened our door too. Then Samir grabbed my wrist. "Wait." We both sat there listening. The bell stopped. For a few seconds, the corridor was silent. Then I heard my own voice, right outside the door. "Open it." My whole body went cold. Samir looked at me, his eyes wide. Again, my voice came from the corridor. "Open the door, please." It didn't sound evil. That was the worst part. It sounded scared. It sounded exactly like me when I panic, but try not to show it. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Samir whispered, "Don't answer." I didn't. The voice outside sighed. Then it said very softly, "You should have listened." The next morning, nobody talked about it openly at first. You know how people are. Everyone wants someone else to admit being scared first. At breakfast, one guy from the 3rd floor, Imran, said, "Did anyone else hear the bell?" The whole table went quiet. Then everyone started talking at once. Some boys had heard their mothers calling from outside their doors. One heard his dead grandfather. One guy claimed he heard his own voice laughing. But 2 boys had opened their doors. One was fine, just badly shaken. He said nobody was there. The other, a quiet first year named Nabil, had packed his bags before sunrise and left without telling anyone. The warden, Mr. Ashraf, acted angry instead of concerned. "There was no bell," he said. "You boys watched too many videos." But I saw his face when someone mentioned the time. 3 a.m. He looked like a man who had heard that exact detail before. For the next 3 nights, nothing happened. Life slowly went back to normal. People joked about it. Someone made a fake bell sound on his phone and got slapped with a slipper. Samir told me maybe it was some senior prank. I wanted to believe that. Then on Friday night, the bell rang again. Ding, ding, ding. This time, nobody opened their doors. The corridor stayed silent. Samir and I sat up in the dark, not breathing properly. Then a voice came from outside. Not mine, Samir's. Bro, it whispered. Wake him up. Samir covered his mouth with both hands. His own voice continued from the other side of the door. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him the stairs are not safe. I looked at Samir. His eyes were wet. Then my voice joined in. Don't trust the warden. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The two voices stood outside our door for maybe a minute, whispering things we couldn't fully understand. Then they walked away. Not footsteps exactly, more like someone dragging their feet slowly down the corridor. The next morning, we went to Mr. Ashraf. He was sitting in his office with a cup of tea, pretending to read a newspaper. Samir told him everything. The warden didn't interrupt. When Samir finished, Mr. Ashraf folded the newspaper and said, At 3 a.m., you stay in your room. You don't open the door. You don't speak to whatever you hear. I asked him why. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said, because it answers in voices that already belong to this place. That didn't explain anything. It made it worse. After that, the hostel changed. People stopped going to the bathroom alone after midnight. Boys kept shoes against their doors, so they would hear if the door moved. Some played Quran recitation quietly. Others wore headphones and pretended none of it was happening. But the bell didn't stop. Every few nights, always at 3 a.m. it rang, and every time voices came. Sometimes they were familiar. Sometimes they were not. One night, a boy on our floor heard his father outside, calmly asking him to come downstairs. His father was alive, sleeping in another city. Another night, someone heard a baby crying, even though there were no children in the hostel. And then one night, I heard myself again. This time, my voice said something I had never told anyone. Your mother's reports are in the blue folder. I froze. My mother had been sick earlier that year. Nothing serious, or at least that's what my parents told me. The blue folder was at home in Multan. I had seen it once on my father's desk. No one in the hostel knew about it. My voice outside the door whispered, call her tomorrow. Don't wait. I didn't sleep after that. In the morning, I called my mother. She sounded tired. Too tired. I pushed her until she admitted she had to go for follow-up tests, and my father had been trying not to worry me. That was the first time I wondered if the voice was trying to help. That thought was dangerous, because fear is easier when something is only evil. The moment it gives you useful information, you start listening. A week later, the bell rang again. Ding, ding, ding. Samir was away that night, visiting relatives, so I was alone. The hostel felt colder than usual. Rain tapped against the window, and somewhere outside, a dog barked once and went quiet. Then my own voice came from the corridor. Open the door. I sat frozen on my bed. The voice sounded exhausted. Please, I don't have much time. I whispered, who are you? The voice outside went silent. Then it answered, I'm you. My stomach tightened. I should have stopped there. I should have covered my ears. I should have called someone. Instead, I stood up and walked closer to the door. The floor was freezing under my feet. The voice said, tomorrow night, don't go downstairs when the lights go out. I pressed my hand against the door. Why? Because Ashraf will tell everyone it's a short circuit. He'll ask for volunteers. Don't go. How do you know that? A pause. Then my voice said something that made my knees weak. Because I did. I backed away from the door. The corridor outside became completely silent. Then the voice whispered. I opened the door too late. The next day, I told Samir everything. He believed me immediately. That scared me, because Samir was usually the kind of guy who joked through everything. That evening, around 8 p.m., the electricity went out. Not unusual. Hostels lose power all the time. But then Mr. Ashraf came upstairs with a flashlight and started knocking on doors. Everyone stay calm, he said. Just a short circuit near the back stairwell. I need 2 boys to help move some boxes away. Samir and I looked at each other. My skin went cold. A few seniors volunteered. I grabbed one of them, a guy named Denial, and said, "Don't go." He laughed. "Why? Ghost told you." I couldn't explain it without sounding insane. Mr. Ashraf saw me holding Denial's arm. His expression changed. Not anger. Recognition. Like he had been waiting for me to interfere. He said, "You stay in your room." The way he said it made my heart sink. My heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. Samir pulled me inside and locked the door. A few minutes later, we heard boys moving down the stairwell. Then a crash. Then shouting. Not screams. Just panic. Confusion. Footsteps running. The power came back 20 minutes later. We found out later that an old section of ceiling near the back stairs had collapsed. One boy broke his arm. Denial had been standing just outside the worst of it. If he had taken 2 more steps, he would have been under the falling concrete. After that, I couldn't ignore the voice. It had warned me, or warned itself. That night, at 3 a.m., the bell rang again. I was already awake. Samir whispered, "Don't." But I was up before he could stop me. My hands were shaking as I stood in front of the door. Outside, my voice said, "Now you believe me." I asked, "What do you want?" "I want you to leave before the last bell." "What last bell?" No answer. Then the voice said, "Ashraf knows. He rings it first. After that, it rings by itself." I looked through the peephole. The corridor was empty, but at the far end, near the stairs, Mr. Ashraf was standing in the dark. He was facing my door. Even after escaping, even with the safety of locked doors between us, a small, cold part of me couldn't stop replaying the face I'd seen through the peephole. The calm, empty eyes that didn't blink. The next morning, I went to the administration office and asked to change hostels. They told me there was a process. Forms, approval, waiting list. I called my father. He told me not to be dramatic. He said, "Beta, every hostel has problems. Focus on your studies." So I stayed. That was my mistake. 3 nights later, the bell rang louder than ever. Not 3 times. Again and again and again, shaking through the building like an alarm. Doors opened all over the hostel. Boys shouted. Someone ran down the corridor. Samir jumped out of bed and pushed our cupboard against the door. Then the voices started. Everywhere. Dozens of them. My voice. Samir's voice. Other boys' voices. Mothers. Fathers. Friends. All calling from the corridor at once. "Open up. Help me. Come outside. It's safe. It's too late." I covered my ears, but I could still hear my own voice under all of them. Window. I looked up. Our room was on the first floor, not too high. Outside the window was a narrow ledge above the back courtyard. Samir understood before I said anything. We dragged the bed to the window, forced it open, and climbed out into the cold night air. Rain had made the ledge slippery. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I gripped the window frame. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. Behind us, something knocked on our door. Once, then again. Then the knocking became violent. Samir climbed down first, hanging from the ledge before dropping into the courtyard. I followed, landed badly, and pain shot up my ankle. We ran anyway. The back gate was locked. Samir started shouting for the guard. No answer. From inside the hostel, the bell stopped. The silence after it was worse. Then I heard footsteps behind us. Mr. Ashraf came out through the back entrance, holding the brass bell by its rope. He looked calm. Too calm. "You shouldn't have listened," he said. I asked him what was happening. He smiled a little. "Everyone hears themselves eventually." Samir yelled, "Open the gate." Mr. Ashraf ignored him and looked at me. "Your voice is not warning you," he said. "It's remembering." Then from the hostel above us, from our own room window, I heard myself scream. "Run! Samir picked up a loose brick and smashed the gate lock. It didn't break fully, but it bent enough for us to force the gate open. We ran into the street barefoot, soaked and terrified. The street looked ordinary, quiet, even comforting, but my gut told me something was off. I'd learned too late that danger often wears a friendly face. A rickshaw driver sleeping nearby woke up when he saw us. We begged him to take us anywhere away from there. He didn't ask questions. Maybe our faces were enough. The police came later because my father drove through the night after I finally called him properly. The official explanation was simple. Old wiring, panic, structural issues, a disturbed warden who resigned quietly 2 weeks later. No one mentioned the bell. No one explained why the CCTV from that night showed dozens of boys standing outside closed doors, speaking to empty corridors. No one explained why our room door had scratch marks on the inside, even though Samir and I had escaped through the window. And no one explained the recording on my phone. I didn't remember recording anything, but the next morning there was a voice memo saved at exactly 3 a.m. It was my voice, older somehow, tired, breathing hard. It said, "When you hear the bell again, don't answer. Don't warn yourself too much. Every warning makes the loop stronger." Then after a long pause, it whispered, "I'm still in the corridor." I deleted it. Then I restored it. Then I deleted it again. It has been years now. I don't live in hostels anymore. I don't like bells. I don't answer unknown knocks after midnight. And sometimes when I hear my own voice in a recording, I feel sick for no reason. Samir and I still talk, but never about that night. Last year, he sent me one message at 3:04 a.m. Just one line. "Did you hear it too?" I hadn't. Not that night. But sometimes I wake up just before 3 a.m. with my room completely dark and my phone screen glowing beside me. And I wait, because deep down, I know the bell isn't finished. Maybe it never was. Maybe every warning I heard was from a version of me who opened the door. Maybe one day, I'll be the voice in the corridor, begging some younger version of myself not to make the same mistake. So if you ever wake up at 3 a.m. and hear a bell ringing from somewhere inside your building, don't open your door. And if the voice outside sounds like yours, don't trust it just because it's scared. Story 10. Have you ever been given a rule that sounded stupid at first, but later realized it was the only reason you were still alive? I'm not talking about normal hostel rules like no smoking, no loud music, lights out at 11. I mean rules that make no sense when you first hear them. Never look under your bed. Never answer knocks after midnight. Never count the students in the hallway. My name is Saad. I was 16 when this happened, and I was studying at a small college near Abbottabad. My parents sent me there because my grades had dropped badly in matric, and my father thought living away from home would make me serious. The hostel was behind the college, built on a slope with pine trees around it, and a narrow road that turned muddy every time it rained. It wasn't scary in the daytime, just old. The paint was peeling, the windows rattled in the wind, and the hallways always smelled like wet socks, tea, and floor cleaner. There were about 40 boys living there. Most of us were first-year students, loud, bored, homesick, and always hungry. My room was on the second floor, room 207, with 3 other boys, Hamza, Bilal, and a quiet kid named Ferris who barely spoke unless someone asked him something directly. The warden was named Mr. Qasim. He was thin, serious, and always wore the same brown sweater, even when it wasn't cold. On my first evening, after my father left, Mr. Qasim called all the new students into the dining hall. He gave us a printed sheet. At the top it said, "Hostel night rules." Some were normal. No leaving after 10 p.m. No shouting. No visitors. Then came the strange ones. Never look under your bed after lights out. Never answer 3 knocks after midnight. If you hear someone calling your name from the hallway, do not reply. If you see students standing in the corridor at night, do not count them. If your roommate is sleeping, do not wake him unless you are sure he is breathing. Everyone laughed. One boy actually raised his hand and said, "Sir, is this a joke?" Mr. Qasim didn't smile. He just looked around the room and said, These rules are not for discipline. They are for your safety. That made everyone laugh even more. I laughed too. I mean, what else was I supposed to do? At that age, when something scares you a little, you make fun of it before anyone notices. That first week was normal enough. Classes, homework, evening tea, late-night whispers, boys complaining about the food. The only strange thing was how seriously the older students treated the rules. At 10 p.m., they closed their doors. At midnight, the entire building became quiet. Not peaceful quiet, forced quiet, like everyone was pretending to be asleep. The first off thing happened on my fourth night. I woke up because someone knocked on our door. 3 soft knocks. Tap, tap, tap. I opened my eyes and stared into the darkness. The room was still. Hamza was snoring. Bilal had one arm hanging off his bed. Ferris lay flat on his back, eyes closed, blanket pulled up to his chin. Then the knocks came again. Tap, tap, tap. A voice whispered from outside. Saad. My whole body tightened. It sounded like Hamza, but Hamza was sleeping 2 beds away from me. I sat up slowly. My throat felt dry. The voice came again. Saad, opened the door. I forgot my key. I looked at Hamza, still asleep. I almost laughed. My first thought was that one of the seniors was pranking me. They probably knew the warden's rules and wanted to scare the new boys. I put one foot on the floor. Then Ferris spoke. Don't. His voice was so low I barely heard it. I turned toward him. His eyes were open now, staring at the ceiling. Don't answer after midnight, he whispered. The knocking stopped. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then something brushed against the bottom of the door, like fingernails dragging across the wood. Slowly, from one side to the other. I pulled my foot back into bed and didn't move again until morning. At breakfast, I told Hamza what happened. He said, Bro, I never left the room. Bilal laughed and said I was dreaming. Ferris didn't say anything. He just kept tearing his parda into small pieces, not eating it. After breakfast, I went to Mr. Qasim. I expected him to dismiss it or tell me seniors were playing jokes. Instead, he asked one question. How many knocks? I said 3. His face changed just a little. Then you did well not opening. That was all. No explanation. No comfort. Just that. The next few nights, I followed the rules. I didn't look under the bed. I didn't answer sounds. I didn't even get up to use the washroom after midnight. But fear doesn't stay the same. It grows bored. It finds new ways to enter your head. One night, around 1 a.m., I heard whispering. Not from the hallway. From under my bed. At first, I thought it was wind or pipes. Then I heard my mother's voice. Clear as anything. Saad Beta, look at me. I froze. My mother was hundreds of kilometers away in Rawalpindi. The voice came again, softer. Please, just look once. I gripped my blanket, so hard my fingers hurt. Under the bed, something shifted. A small scrape, then a breath. I wanted to laugh at my own paranoia, but the whisper of footsteps from the hallway made me freeze, every nerve screaming that I was not imagining this. Across the room, Ferris was awake too. In the darkness, I heard him whisper, "Don't listen to voices that love you." That sentence stayed with me. Don't listen to voices that love you. Because whatever was under my bed knew exactly which voice would break me. The next morning, I checked under the bed in daylight. There was nothing there except dust, an old wrapper, and one of Bilal's socks. But on the underside of the wooden frame, something had been scratched into the wood. Saad looked, except I hadn't. I called my father that day and told him I wanted to leave. He got angry. Not shouting angry, but disappointed angry, which was worse. You wanted phone, laptop, freedom, he said. Now you can't survive 1 week? I couldn't explain it properly. How do you tell your father that a hostel rulebook is the only thing stopping something from crawling into your room? So I stayed. Things got worse after that. Students started looking tired. Not normal tired. Drained. Like they hadn't slept in days. One boy from room 203 stopped coming to class. When we asked about him, the seniors said he had gone home. But his shoes were still outside his door. His towel still hung on the balcony railing. His name was still on the attendance board. Only the warden acted like nothing was strange. Then came the rule about counting. It happened on a Friday night. Rain was hitting the windows hard, and the power kept flickering. Around midnight, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Many footsteps. Bare feet, slippers, dragging shoes. Our door had a small crack near the frame. I don't know why I looked through it. Maybe curiosity. Maybe stupidity. The corridor was dim, lit only by the emergency bulb near the stairs. Students were standing there, silent, facing our door. I recognized some of them. Boys from the first floor. A senior named Danish. The missing boy from room 203. My heart sank into my stomach. They stood shoulder to shoulder, all staring at our door. Bilal woke up and whispered, "What is it?" I didn't answer. I started counting without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then Ferris grabbed my wrist so hard I almost cried out. "Don't count them," he whispered. I stopped at 7. The moment I stopped, every face in the hallway turned slightly. Not their bodies, just their faces, all at once, like they had heard the number inside my head. Then one of them smiled. It was the missing boy. He raised his hand and knocked. Tap, tap, tap. Bilal made a small choking sound and covered his mouth. The knock came again. Tap, tap, tap. Then Mr. Qasim's voice came from the stairwell. "Go back." The hallway went silent. I heard him walking slowly, his slippers slapping the floor. "Go back," he said again, louder this time. For a second, nothing moved. Then the emergency light flickered. When it came back, the hallway was empty. The next morning, Ferris finally told me something. He said the hostel had burned partially in the late 1990s. Not completely, just the old wing, which was later rebuilt into the second-floor rooms. There were students trapped inside, he said. I asked how many. He looked at me and said, "Don't ask numbers here." That was when I realized the rules weren't random. They were not meant to protect us from one thing. They were instructions for surviving inside a place that had learned how to pretend. The turning point came during exam week. Everyone was stressed. Boys were sleeping at weird hours, studying all night, drinking tea until their hands shook. Rules started feeling less important than passing chemistry. That's how it gets you, I think. Not by attacking when you're alert, by waiting until you're tired. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke up to someone crying. It was Hamza. He was sitting on his bed, staring at the floor. "Hamza," I whispered. He didn't respond. Then he bent forward, toward the space under his bed. Ferris sat up instantly. "No," he said. Hamza whispered, "It's my sister." A girl's voice came from under his bed. "Bye, please help me." Hamza started lowering himself. I jumped out of bed and grabbed his shirt. He fought me like he didn't recognize me. "My sister is under there," he cried. "Leave me." Bilal woke up and helped me pull him back. Then from under Hamza's bed, the voice changed. It became deep, angry. "You looked last time." Hamza went completely still. The room went cold in a way I can't explain. Not winter cold, empty cold. Then the door clicked, locked. From the outside, my heart sank into my stomach as the door clicked shut behind me, and I realized I was completely alone. Someone was watching, and I had no way out. 3 knocks came. Tap, tap, tap. Then Mr. Qasim's voice. "Open the door." Ferris whispered, "No." Bilal said, "It's the warden." Ferris shook his head. "Not after midnight." The voice outside sighed. It sounded exactly like Mr. Qasim. "Boys, open this door now." Hamza was crying quietly. Bilal kept whispering prayers. I stood there with my back against the wall, sweating in the cold. Then the voice outside changed. My mother. "Saad, open the door." Then my father. "Stop being stupid." Then my own voice. "Open it." I can't explain what it feels like to hear yourself speaking from the other side of a locked door. It makes your thoughts feel unsafe. The knocking became louder. Not angry. Patient. Tap. 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 Again and again. Then Ferris did something I'll never forget. He got out of bed, walked to the door, and pressed his forehead against it. Very softly, he said, "We are four." The knocking stopped. Ferris turned toward us. His face looked gray. "We are four," he said again. "Remember that." Then from under Bilal's bed, a voice whispered, "5." Bilal screamed. The room exploded into panic. Hamza climbed onto his bed. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, but there was no signal. Ferris kept repeating, "We are four, we are four, we are four," like a prayer. Something moved under Bilal's bed. The mattress lifted slightly, just an inch, then another. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the keys. Every second felt stretched, like time itself was conspiring against me. But there were no keys. There had never been keys inside the room. Then the window opened. Not slowly. It slammed open so hard the glass cracked. Rain blew into the room. Outside, on the narrow ledge, Mr. Qasim was standing. The real one. His face was wet, his sweater soaked, one hand gripping the pipe beside the window. "Climb out," he said. None of us moved. Now, we climbed through the window one by one onto the ledge. It was barely wide enough for our feet. Rain made everything slippery. I remember looking down and seeing the dark courtyard 2 floors below, and thinking I would rather fall than stay in that room another second. Behind us, something inside the room began knocking from under every bed. Tap, 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 tap. Too many knocks. Too many hands. Mr. Qasim guided us along the ledge to the stairwell window. We fell inside one after another, crying, shaking, barely able to stand. In the stairwell, I looked back through the rain. Our room window was still open. Inside, I saw 4 beds, and 5 shadows standing between them. One was wearing my shape. After that night, my father came and took me home. The college said there had been structural problems in the hostel and moved students to another building. Nobody talked about the missing boy. Nobody talked about the 5th shadow. When I asked Mr. Qasim what the hostel wanted, he looked older than before. He said, "It doesn't want. It repeats." I asked why he stayed there. He said, "Because boys don't listen unless someone makes rules." That was the last time I saw him. Years have passed. I still don't sleep with space under my bed. I don't answer knocks at night. I don't ignore rules that sound strange just because they embarrass me. And sometimes, when I walk past a hostel or an old building with yellow hallway lights, I feel that same cold pressure in my chest. Because I understand something now. The rules were never superstition. They were not there to keep ghosts away. They were there because the hostel had already taken people, and it knew how to sound like someone you trusted. So if you ever stay somewhere and the warden gives you strange rules, don't laugh. Read them carefully. Follow every single one. And whatever you do, if you see students standing in the hallway after midnight, don't count them.